coverage of ink on a paper and you are not able to achieve a full coverage, it's due to improperly balanced ink strength. So your ink strength is not balanced, and viscosity of the ink is also not good, as well as ink and water balance. If you have poor ink transfer rollers or blankets, you also have that problem, or improper registration of it. To solve it, you adjust your ink so that you can have progressively lower tack on the machine. You also you adjust it so that you have heavier film of film on the paper, of ink on the paper. And you also adjust it so that you will lower progressively the viscosity of the ink. In some cases, the ink-water balance is not good, and so has to be addressed. The fourth is color variation, or what we call ink consistency. So you print a book and you open to a particular page and you compare with other books and you see variations. And that is a pain to a lot of publishers. Now, it's caused sometimes by the use of single color machines. If you use single color machines, you use it to print, by the time you finish the fourth color, you have variations in it. Sometimes you have very insufficient make-ready sheets. And so instead of using a minimum of 200 sheets for make-ready, you use just about 5 or 10 because you want to lower cost. And by the time you are halfway through, your print has now stabilized to get consistent color. But what you started from beginning has a different color from the beginning. And if you frequently stop your machine, that also brings about color variation. So if you start a machine, the ink saturation is different from when you are midway or when you are getting close to the end of the print. So it's important for you to ensure that you keep just a good quantity of prints, maybe 200 prints above, and getting towards the end, you take off a few of them and use them for make ready rather than mixing the paper up. Sometimes your process color print doesn't match the supplied proof, and these are causes. Now, how do you solve this? You run constantly without stopping the machine. That's the way you can solve it. And you use multiple color machines to print. You don't use a single color machine to print a good print out and expect that you will get consistency. You also have to look at the water solvent balance regularly. Sometimes the balance is not good, so you don't get good consistency. The fifth is slurring, or what we call the double image. Dots appear elongated or sometimes smudged. Instead of having sharp dots, refined dots, you have it slurred. So you have dot gain over there. Now, the cause is improperly packing your cylinder. If your cylinder is not packed well, every cylinder has packing paper, or sometimes we have packing sheets. Soft blankets, you are likely to have that. And if your gears, what they call the bearings, play a little, then you have such a problem. If you have excessive plate to blanket pressure, so the pressure from experience, you should be able to moderately adjust it so that you don't have too much pressure or less pressure, as well as ink on coated stock. If you put too much ink on coated stock, like coated stock, I mean art paper, one that has gloss, you are likely to have that. To solve that, you have to check the specification and adjust the cylinders, or tighten the blanket clamps and adjust packing or replace the blanket if necessary. You always have to adjust this to the manufacturer's specification. And in some cases, you have to use what we call the kiss impression to check the roller or form impression to check the uniformity of the width of the ink. Adjust press to carry less ink or water. All that comes with experience. You don't just, there's no one button solution. The sixth is misregistered print or blurred color. And I'm sure you are very familiar with that. After the press has been set to properly register, you see that sometimes the conditions on the press doesn't consistently allow it to register. You have one image here and close to it, it's as if it's jumping. And it's caused by improperly aligning the press or the plate or blanket and substrate. Sometimes the blanket is swollen. The blankets are very expensive, so sometimes it's very difficult to change it. You want to use one blanket for a lot of jobs, but frequently you have to change your blankets. And if you don't trim your paper or sheet, your press sheet well, you're also likely to, as you print, you have static electricity. If you have static electricity, you can also have the misregistration. If the image is improperly aligned to the plate, you are likely to have such a situation. Now, to solve it, you just have to make adjustments as needed. In some cases, replace the blanket and use registration marks. See, this is a common solution that people have used in the past, that you just use the registration marks provided as a guide, and you are good to go. Then you also have scumming, or what we call the greasing. Non-image areas of the plate accept ink in random areas. Areas that are not supposed to have ink sometimes receive ink. The white area sometimes receive ink, and it's not supposed to happen. And it happens because you have low alcohol content in your damping system. Excessive printing pressure, you have increased the pressure on the press so much that areas that are not supposed to receive ink are receiving it. Ink body is too greasy or spreads into non-printing area, and plates improperly processed or exposed to light. Sometimes the ink is too soft, and if you have improper pH of the fountain solution, the alkali, you are likely to have scumming. And improperly set or worn damping rollers. Sometimes the rollers become overheated. And so as soon as you see some of these signs, you know what to do to solve it. What do? You adjust your alcohol concentration and make sure that you balance the alcohol water solution. You clean your blankets and rollers thoroughly and reduce the printing pressure to proper levels. Adjust fountain solution to proper pH conductivity and adjust the rollers properly to make sure that the pressure is good. You have to always check the worn out bearings and replace them if necessary. I will give you two more, then we will go on to post-press. The next is picking. That is sometimes lifting of the coating from the coated stock onto plates, blankets, and so forth, or rollers. The linting means accumulation of fiber from uncoated stock onto plates or blankets. And it's something that we see, and you can see a sample there on the screen that we are very familiar with. Well, it happens when you have too much water reaching the paper and pressure is too high for ink stock combination. Blankets are too tacky or ink too tacky for stock. Now, if you adjust your ink water balance, it works out properly and you are able to go. If you also sometimes reduce, you can reduce it by adding reducing agents to the ink to reduce the tack. And if sometimes you just change the paper, it solves it. Or adjust the impression pressure and repack to manufacturer's specification, you are good to go. There's a problem that is called mottling. That is solid areas not of uniform density or resulting in uneven appearance. And I'm sure if you look at what you have on your screen, it's something that you are familiar with. You have non-uniform stock surface, improper printing pressure, improper set or worn foam rollers, or ink water balance. Now, to solve this common problem, you have to just adjust your pressure. So you see that adjusting of pressure and managing your ink water solution is one of the key things that the printer has to adhere to. Sometimes in this particular case, you can just replace the blanket and you are good to go. Or you just properly set your rollers well and the pressure well, and you are good. Then you have piling and cracking. That is when you have built up ink on the printing plates. As you are printing, you have ink that is depositing and stuck on the plates, which is very uncomfortable. And this is because you have paper problems, or sometimes the ink is waterlogged, or improper packing of the cylinders, or set or worn rollers. Blankets sometimes are too tacky. That's why you have that. And to solve it, again, you adjust your dampener. In some cases, go and see your ink manufacturer, or check the specification of the cylinder and rollers and make sure that you replace it if it's necessary. In some cases, you have to jog the substrate, the paper, to get rid of particles in between the stockpile before loading it on the press. And finally, we move into the post press. That's an exciting area. And post press usually refers to all the activities that takes place after printing, such as folding, collating, gathering, binding of sections together. And in many cases, sometimes you have die stamping or embossment or lamination, all bushed together. So you have all this happening in one. Now, when you come to folding, we recommend that as much as possible, machine folding should be encouraged rather than manual folding, to avoid problems such as slanting of pages or wrong pagination and so forth. In the case of collating and gathering, you should carefully monitor to ensure that sections are in the right sequence. And many publishers have complained that sometimes you get missing pages in between. If possible, we recommend that you use machines to gather, or you find quality control measures to check. Sometimes you can use just a simple method of counting the number of forms after you have collated a book. When you have finished collating a book, you just count. If it's 31 forms, you just count the 31 forms. If it's 32, then it means that there's something wrong. If it's 30, then you know that you have to check. That's all you have to do to solve that. In the case of binding, the sections shall be secure. So saddle stitching, to do that, you can, and in the case of saddle stitching, you use you use machines that can actually stitch two pins together. If you use a gatherer, you are sure that you are guaranteed of equidistant stitching. And gatherers are not cheap, but it will ensure that you get it right, because many gatherers come along with trimmers as well. So if you use that, you are guaranteed. And then we recommend that you use rust-free stitching wire as well. In the case of perfect binding, you have to avoid manual application of glue to prevent pages disintegrating. Binders should have a basic feature such as online nipping and scoring. And it should have multiple clamps as well. There are machines that have multiple clamps, like 21 clamps, 24 clamps, 15 clamps, and those are the machines you should go for. Mola Martini has a good machine for binding. The common type of glue is hot melt that is usually used in our part of the world. But PUR glue has also come in strong lately, and it has a high flexibility and strong adhesion, and that's the reason why people are pushing for PUR. But one has to also recognize that PURs are not cheap. It becomes cheaper when the consistency of print or binding of book becomes stable. But if you don't have consistent flow of books, it becomes wasteful or too expensive for you to put such investment in place and wait. Then lamination. Care should be taken to avoid air bubbles or curling of the edges. And I'm sure the curling is also a big pain for publishers, because sometimes you have peeling off, you have pages that are curling as if it's the years of a banana. But one can solve that by controlling the pressure of the laminating machine, making sure that you have sufficient heating and speed. It's just controlling the heat and the speed of the machine and using the right type of film. There are cheaper films on the market, and if you use the cheaper ones, that's what you are bound to have. In some cases too, the ink that is used is not able to accept the film the way you expect it. There are special films that are meant for digital books. There are special films that are meant for offset printed books, and one has to pay particular attention to it. Now, when all that is done and you have to trim, I remember the days when you had to use single knives to cut books. So you cut all the three-sided and print and trim. But we recommend three-way trimmers so that you have equal size of books. And it's also important for you to use knives that are sharpened to ensure that the edges are smooth and good. When all is done, you package and you ensure that the books are carefully wrapped in thin films before packing into boxes to avoid water seeping through. So in brief, this is what we do in the print house. I'll stop here and allow for questions and interactions. Thank you very much.
Please, if you have any question, kindly raise your hand and Mr. Asma will address it for us. Okay, Mr. Mensah, kindly ask your question.
Okay, good morning.
Good morning.
Mr. Asma, yeah, very good presentation. Now, I wanted to find out, I was a little bit late. I wanted to find out, you were talking when you got to the area of challenges that occur in printing. You mentioned when you were talking, you were looking at water ink. Where does the alcohol come in? We know some machines use alcohol. Is it mixed with the water, or the machines that come with the alcohol, they don't use water? That's my question.
Well, the alcohol is mixed with water, but you use the water actually helps the ink to dispel the area that is not supposed to expel the area that's not supposed to receive ink. And so it's a chemical reaction that takes place in a separate unit that supplies the alcohol to the press. So it's not something that you put on the paper. I hope you understand.
Okay. Yeah, a follow-up question. I understand that. Yes, I know they don't put it on paper. You know, previously we had machines that only use water. Only use water. Now we have the alcohol ones. So well, better understanding, what you mean is now the alcohol is mixed with water, but formerly it was we use water. What is the advantage in maybe you want to print and you get a printer who uses a machine that just uses water and a machine that uses maybe a mixture of water and alcohol? What are the disadvantages?
I think that innovation brought up the change. It's the dampening system. The dampening system that removes the ink, makes sure that it manages the ink from touching certain areas. And so it's an improved method of using it. If you use only water, you are sure that the print faults that you are going to find will be much more than the print faults you find in alcohol. The alcohol also gives you finer prints than the water. So the dot fineness of the print is better with alcohol than just water.
Okay, thank you very much.
Is there any more questions? Any more questions? Can you raise your hand, please? Oh. Hello, please, if you have any question, kindly raise your hand and Mr. Asma is available to address it for us.
Hello.
Hello, Asempa. Yes, please.
Yes, please. I'm not getting the reason of hand option. That is why I unmuted it.
Okay.
Please, that's Mr. Akpa, Richard. Yes, I have a question. When he was talking about the book specifications, the design said books below 120 pages or above 120 pages, there are some specifications. That is the side I really want him to address for me.
Okay, I'll post it again. I'll post it again for you to see. Okay.
Oh, okay.
In the case of perfect binding, you know, the bigger the book, the more difficult it will be for you to read the text that fits in the spine. So in order to avoid creeping in this case, we recommend that you don't use the same margin for the inner side of the book. So you see that if it's perfect binding, in the case of books that are more than 120, we suggest that you use more than 20 millimeters. And
Oh,
if
okay.
it's less, you use at least 18 millimeters. Just 2 millimeters difference, but it makes a lot of difference. Is the reason why if you have big books, if you use smaller margins, inner margins, you more or less try to, it's difficult to read what is in the inner margins. So experience will tell you that you should just increase the margins if the books are bigger.
All right. All right. Thank you.
So say, kindly ask your question. Mr. Say.
Good morning. Good morning.
Morning.
Mr. Asma, please do you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah. After talking about all the qualities and getting all the qualities from a printer, it all boils down to the question of affordability. Why is it that printing in Ghana is so much expensive that even the paper, just buying paper, the money you use to buy paper, can print a full work and ship it into Ghana when you are printing outside? Why is there that big difference? And what is the print industry doing about it?
I am very happy you brought this up because it's a concern to the industry. It's not only a concern to the publishers, but it's a concern to us as well. Now, one thing that we have to realize is that the cost of production here in Ghana is too high. And that arguably, some people would argue that maybe it's not true, but it's true because our machines are most of the time idle. I mean, I can remember the last time we printed books in excess of 10,000, maybe about 2 years or 3 years ago. And so there's cost involved in the machine sitting idle. The cost of power in Ghana is more than 2 or 3 times the cost of electricity in India or China. Now, if you bring paper in, I'm bringing paper in full unprinted sheets. And so the paper I'm bringing comes along with the waste as well. So if I bring 1 container of paper that is not used, and you go and print, and I want to use that paper to print, say, 10,000 books. When you print a finished book in China or India, that same quantity will just occupy a quarter, or in some cases, maybe half of the container. So shipping costs would also be too much for us. Now, we also depend on paper merchants. The paper merchants here, we don't have any control on the paper merchants. So you started off by saying that the price of paper here is more than the full cost of printing the book. It's a question that I think we have to address, that if together we are able to lobby government to remove the almost 40% levy on the raw materials that we use, I'm sure it will go a long way to reduce the cost of paper, because in the past, we lobbied and we got government to remove VAT. Now, VAT is not our money, it's government money. So if government says it's removed VAT, invariably, government has said that the money that is supposed to give to me, don't give it to me, but it's +1 -1. What we are seeking to get them to remove is the duty, which in some cases 20%, some cases it's 15%. So if you add 18% VAT to it, you are in the region of about 20%. So you are lost there. Now, because China or India is also the print hub of the world, efficiency is there. The volume they receive would also allow them to charge cheaper. So their margin could be anywhere between 2 to 5%. And they are fine because they are dry. But in our case, we don't have that. If we are able to build that loyalty or increase the throughput of books in Ghana, I believe that will be able to also charge cheaper. There are two types of processes when it comes to offset. There's sheet-fed and web-fed, sheet-fed paper. And for some reason, strange reason, we have only a few web-fed machines in Ghana, but sheet-fed machines are here because sheet-fed machines can be used to do other things when the season of books are not there. And so it's a very complex discussion that we have to engage in to ensure that we are able to make books more affordable. But the change is coming because very soon, and I'm not a prophet, but I can predict that in the next 4 to 5 years, books will no more be printed in the thousands. They would not be printed in 10,000s. They will be printed as short run. And if it's short run, then what will happen is that the digital presses will take over and be able to print a lot. So we knew that this disruption was coming, but the disruption has been hastened by the COVID. With the COVID, books are in danger. And when I say books, printed books are in danger. If anybody wanted printed books, he would rather go for a smaller quantity rather than a bigger quantity. So I guess that it's an evolving industry. And with time, I'm sure we will see a lot of changes.
Thank you very much, sir.
Mr. Labi, please, your question.
Okay. Asma, thank you very much for this very good presentation. One of the best ways to secure perfect binding books is section sewing. But it's not very common to find section sewing in our industry here. I just want to know, do you provide that facility, section sewing of books?
Yes, it's available. We can sew. But what it is that for you to be able to sew 20,000 books, you need a lot of time. It's not cheap. It's also very expensive. The cheaper versions are bigger machines. And coming back to the same issue, how many people, and maybe it's only the Ministry of Education who would require that you sew your books and come for bigger volumes. But if you're investing, say, $100,000 in a machine, you want to be sure that at least every month you will be able to sew 10,000 books. But if I bring a sewing machine, an industrial sewing machine, and I put it in place, and in a year I will sew only 5,000 books, I would rather put that machine in a printing machine rather than a sewing machine. It's the same reason why we don't, as of now, we don't have PUR binders here in Ghana.
Okay. Oh, yeah, I do understand. Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. So if there are no more questions, we'll be ending today's session. Okay, I would like to say a very big thank you to Mr. Asma for such a wonderful presentation. I know this printing is quite, how do you call it? It's quite technical, yes. But I believe we've all had a wonderful time or wonderful session. So Mr. Asma, thanks so much for sharing us your ideas and expertise in the field of print production. And I believe as practitioners in the field, we adhere to these standards so that we can have a wonderful, or how do we call it? We can produce books of quality standards, that means internationally. And as beginning of this session, I mentioned that this is brought to you by a Ghana Book Development Council, which is an agency under the Ministry of Education that is basically, Okay, so the Ghana Book Development Council, we coordinate the activities of the book industry in Ghana here. So for further questions, for clarifications, you can contact us. I've shared we have our information there. So further comments or suggestions, you can contact us on these various contact information that we have on our screens. And you can link up anytime you want. And we are always available to help and help grow this industry. So thanks so much to everyone who participated today, and so sorry for all hitches or any challenges that we faced during or beginning of the session. And hopefully August, we'll be having another workshop on another aspect of standards. So let's keep our fingers crossed. The date will be communicated to us later. So August, another workshop will be coming up, and dates will be communicated to us later. So thank you, and let's all have a wonderful day. God bless you.
Thank you too. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you.